Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ohio State Buckeyes Primetime Live. I'm Ryan Stano,
I'm Garrison Gaddy.
and we are back at it here for another week. Big win last weekend, Saturday night, another top five matchup against the Indiana Hoosiers. I was on campus for the game. Campus was buzzing, even though no one's used to Indiana being a top five team. But the juice was still there, and I thought that was important for the juice to still be there. Even though I don't know about you, Garrison, and I know we talked about it on the show, but a lot of the Ohio State fans around me, they didn't really seem to think IU was too big of a threat. But it was good to see the juice there. Ohio State gets a solid win, 38-15. Give me some of your overall thoughts on how this game was played.
The game went how I thought it would. Like I said before, all last week, whether it be turnovers or for whatever reason, I thought it was going to be a slow start to the game because that just seems to, be par for course for this team. But it looked like the Penn State game to me, where it looked close in the first half, but Ohio State was clearly in command of the game. You have IU go down for that. On their first drive, they score a touchdown. After that, it was nothing. And honestly, on that first drive, it looked like Jim Knowles baited them. He didn't blitz for that first drive. He sent four, played a lot of man, a lot of tight coverage on the outside on the wide receivers, turned into a few PIs. The first one was kind of questionable, but after that, man, he unloaded. He did.
Yeah.
And Indiana had some success running the ball to an extent, but I feel sometimes people forget. Though you see you can see 6 yards per carry, you can see 4 yards per carry. Yeah, but what happens when you get that 2 yarder, that 1 yarder, that 3 yarder? Now you're in 2nd and 8. Now you're in 3rd and 7.
Yeah,
and that's what happened to Indiana. I was very impressed with our defense. I was very impressed with the play calling. It's really rare that we get to see back-to-back sacks. That happened. Cody Simon, my goodness, play like a man possessed.
Yeah.
Well, I really liked it.
Yeah, and early on, and we talked about it even on the show about how we knew Ohio State they were going to start. They're going to start slow, specifically on the defensive end. I mean, IU coming off the bye week, Ohio State's defense always struggled there on that first drive. It's been like that every game, no matter who they've played. And I didn't think this was going to be any different. And again, IU, I still think Indiana's a pretty good team. Nothing that I saw on Saturday changes that. Now, I never thought they were elite. I never thought this game was going to be, all that close.
Right.
Once the first half was over, I was a little bit surprised to see kind of IU special teams blunders really kind of put them in a hole. The punt return from Caleb Downs, the issues with the snap on a punt. Like there were all kinds of problems on the special teams front that I didn't necessarily expect to see from them. And on the flip side, Ohio State special teams after earlier in the year, they've been fantastic. So
yes.
I think that's a big positive for this game as well. I mean, Downs gets hit the first punt return for an Ohio State player since 2014, since Jalen Marshall against Indiana. So that if
Ted Ginn called it in the big noon kickoff too before the game.
Yeah. And it's good. It's good to see them put Downs back there because he had success doing that. Against a lot of the teams in the SEC there at Alabama. I mean, he was a great special teams player too. But after that defense allowed that first drive touchdown, they shut him down. I mean, Indiana, Curtis Rourke was 8 of 18 for 68 yards. That's pretty darn good. They only allowed IU, they had 40 carries for 85 yards. That's 2.1 yards per carry. And then they had that last, touchdown there at the end when it didn't really mean a whole lot. So I thought the defense played really good. There were those concerning moments early. I know you mentioned the penalty, the Igbinosun penalty, which, again, he's good for at least one of those a game. So we knew that was going to happen. But, you also mentioned the sacks. I think that's an important part of this game. You mentioned Cody Simon. He was an absolute beast. I think this is a good it's more than good. It's a great performance to have at home in front of your fans during a top 5 matchup, doing exactly what you should.
Exactly. And like, I'm not to say that you meant to do this, but I mean, I've seen a lot of people, they said that, or when we say blunders, I think they only had one blunder. I'm not gonna call Caleb Downs' kick return a blunder. Like a lot of people sat there and like kind of poo-pooed it as if that was Indiana's fault. No, he made someone miss. The funny part about it, he jogged it. That was the funniest part.
I wouldn't call it a blunder, no, but I mean it's something else that went wrong on special teams.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I don't think you meant to say that, like, or you meant it in that fashion, as like a lot of other people did.
Yeah,
but I mean, it was, and also I do want to point this out. You didn't hear Burke's name all game. When you don't hear a corner's name all game, that's a good thing.
Yeah, unless he's getting interceptions.
Thing.
Yeah,
exactly. It's good not to hear his name. And even Igbenogson, after those 2 penalties, he played really well. Really well. I mean, there's a reason why Warwick had 68 passing yards.
Yeah. And we talked about it before the game, how the front four, you specifically mentioned how the front four needed to get some pressure. And I talked about my guy, Tyleek. I thought he played really well.
Oh, yeah.
Getting pressure up the middle. Again, not allowing Rourke to really step into a lot of those throws. So, as much as we're praising the second, I think the front door deserves a shout out. Front four deserves a shout out too.
Exactly. And I also want to point this out, because when we talk about shutting down their offense, so on the first drive of the game, Indiana got 70 yards. On the last drive of the game, they got 75. That's a total of 145.
Yeah.
They finished with 153.
Yep.
I mean, it was a masterclass by Jim Knowles in that defense. To go to the other side on offense, I thought that, like, just starting with the O-line, I didn't think they played bad. I thought that in terms of the run game, they could have played much better. But I did think that when we need to run the ball outside of that 4th and 1, and I never again want to see us go into shotgun on the 1-yard line. I never again want to. All I want to see is Will Howard's big behind, go under center, and run it in.
Yeah,
there's just no reason to be in shotgun. Yeah, there's just no reason
to
be in shotgun. I agree with that. And but I thought in pass protection, that offensive line played well. And who would have thunk the 2 guys that had the highest PFS scores this week? So Austin, and it was Hinsman. They had the 2 highest grades this week on our O-line. So that gave me a lot of hope going into this week, into this game this Saturday, playing against one of the better defensive lines. What do you think about the O-line?
Yeah, and I know you mentioned how you didn't think that Arizona did well or as well in the run game. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. I'm going to give the offensive line its total flowers because of the week that they had, losing their leader as center, Seth McLaughlin, for the year. Again, second guy to go down to the season-ending injury. And even though they reshuffled it to a point where they had a center who had started all 12 games for him last year move back to that spot, and they had a guy in Austin Searveld who had at least played, earlier in the year, so he at least had some experience. But Ohio State still ran the ball 25 times for 115 yards. Yeah, that's only 4 yards to carry, but they had 2 touchdowns in there as well. And quite frankly, they probably could have run the ball a little bit more if they wanted to. It was clear they wanted to get Will Howard in a rhythm early. I mean, you don't see him throw 26 passes very often. He was 22, 26, 201, those 2 touchdowns. And that interception was not his fault. Jelani kind of he dropped that ball. It hit his hands.
That was a really good pass.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough catch. It was a little bit behind him, but that's because Howard threw it where the defender wasn't going to be. So I thought Will, again, played fantastic. And the offensive line in general, like you said, they did do really well in pass pro. And that's encouraging coming up in a game against another team that's got a really solid defensive line. Yeah. So, for as much flack as I've given Justin Fry over the last couple years for his on the field work. For his on the field work and his recruiting, I got to give him some credit because he's done a phenomenal job here in these last few weeks.
Okay. So this is the reason why I made those comments about the run game. Yeah, Judkins at 2.6. Jeremiah had the 1 for 12. Now Travion had 9 for 68, but that was a 39-yarder that came at the end of the game. But that's why I said, like, I do believe there were times in the game when we ran the ball effectively when we needed to do it. And granted, man, we only had what 55 plays this game. Yeah, we only ran
Yeah, it
55 plays.
was. Yeah.
So, and yeah, I think we could have ran the ball more. We could have. But I mean,
And I
Crenshaw
think,
getting 14 carries, that's for par. He's only gone over 15 carries once this year. Travion having 9, he averages about 11 or 12 a game.
yep. Well, and you talk about that run late. I think that is a bit of a product of Ohio State wearing the front of IU down. They're at the end of
Yes.
the game. They know if they don't stop them here, even if they do stop them, it might be, it's still technically a 2-score game at that point, but, just one last shot to the jaw for the Ohio State offensive line. And that, it's strange. I'm interested to hear your take on this. A lot of talk back in Indiana about that last touchdown that Will Howard decided to go ahead and run it in after Travion slid. What did you think of that whole ordeal?
Don't give a damn. Don't give a damn. Look, at the beginning of the season, and it was really refreshing to hear Ryan Day say this. At the beginning of the season, I said I wanted Ohio State to leave, no doubt, this year. No doubt. And I think that when Ryan Day did that, don't get me wrong, Travion, it was smart of you. And he's a really nice guy, and I understand it. Don't care. I love the fact that Ryan Day did that because I think that's a mindset thing. It's a mindset.
I think it's that. I thought it was really strange that Henderson slid and then Will Howard went in there anyway. But I think what happened was Day went up to him and was like, "Hey, we're not stopping. We heard what Cignetti said when he got hired. We heard that he said Ohio State sucks. We're not going to let that stand here." So I don't mind it one bit. Goes to the old adage: if you don't want him to score, stop him.
Yeah.
So I don't really have that big of an issue with it. It seems like all the IU fans were kind of up in arms based on what I saw, on Twitter and, back home, some of the local sports radio talk. So I saw it. Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But what I do think is a big deal is some of the recruits that they had on campus for that game. And there was one big one in particular. And that is 5-star offensive lineman David Sanders Jr. And this is, this isn't his first time on campus. And he has been a Tennessee commit since August. So, but this is someone that Ohio State has had on their radar for a while now. Justin Fry has been recruiting him hard. He was flirting with Clemson prior to his commitment to Tennessee as well. And Ohio State's clearly making a big push for him here, and it sounds like there's a chance he's on campus this weekend too. So this would be, how I talked about before, I'd given Justin Fry a lot of flack. I'd pretty much have to take back all my flack if he was able to land this guy. I mean, he's the number 1 offensive tackle recruit in the 2025 class, number 5 overall recruit according to the composite on 247 Sports. So I think, having him on campus is a big deal. And if they can flip him, that would really help set up the Ohio State recruiting class for the offensive line specifically for years to come, even if they end up losing a few guys in other positions. What do you think?
No, it's huge. And Justin Fry, it's not that Justin Fry hasn't gotten big offensive lineman recruits. Luke Montgomery was a big time offensive lineman recruit, but he's from Ohio. He grew up a Buckeye, so it wasn't that hard to
well, yeah, he's a 4-star kid. He hasn't had that Paris Johnson, that big 5-star recruit, no doubter.
And so David Sanders, man, he's someone. And for all the Buckeye fans that don't know, he was actually the teammate of Jaden Davis, the freshman quarterback for the University of whatever. But if Justin Fry can lock this down and flip him from Tennessee, this would do wonders. And the truth of the matter is that I think if he's able to do it, this will just be the cherry on the top of him proving his worth at Ohio State this season, because he has done that. That was the 15th rendition of the Ohio State offensive line we saw this year, this past Saturday. And so I think that when you see what he's been able to do to the offensive line, recruits are going to notice that. I think David Sanders notices that. I think he also sees the opportunities that you would have at going to Ohio State, being on the field and off the field. which is, I mean, more than you could ever have at Tennessee, for being completely honest here. And that's for a lot of the Big Ten teams compared to the SEC teams.
Yeah.
But I know a showing like we had against Indiana was big. No, it's a big time game. Recruits like to see that. Wish it was at night because then it would have been much better. But no, and if he's able to come back to the game this weekend, and does it, and we do what I think we're going to do.
If he comes back 2 weekends in a row, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Oh, it is. It is. It is. And I've seen like on a bunch of message boards, some message boards for Tennessee fans. They think it's a wrap for him. They think it's a wrap for him. They think he's gone. They do. They also think that.
Well, and I think this kind of ties into, what we talked about last week with Naima Ford. Word is he's probably going to flip. He's probably, and it looked like initially he had been linked to Auburn for a really long time, and then it was Oregon, and now it seems like it's back to Auburn. But none of those conversations seem to mention Ohio State. Mm-hmm. So if he flips, that means there's more NIL money open for a 5-star recruit like David Sanders, for someone who can really help, change the future of this offensive line. Because as we've seen this season, depth is a premium at the offensive line. And Ohio State didn't really have a whole lot of depth coming into the season. Now they've built depth now because they've kind of had to. But when you get a guy like a 5-star, can play left tackle day one kind of guy, that really helps elevate the unit as a whole. So, it would be huge if they can land him. And you know what? If there's still a slight shot they can keep Ford if he ends up visiting this weekend, now that's certainly not a done deal either. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. And also, like, if you told me, hey, you get David Sanders, but you lose offer, I would take it. I would, because the truth of the matter is, Ohio State. Yeah, I'll go say this. Ohio State has the deepest cornerback room in the nation. It's a 2-corner system. I mean, if you look at the corners on Ohio State's team, you still got guys like Bryce West who aren't even touching the field right now. Like, there's guys like that. And so
Aaron Scott.
Exactly. I think the immediate impact that David Sanders would have would do wonders. It would.
Yeah. Yeah. And, corner also, that is a premium position, but there's not a bigger position than, it's left tackle is a premium position where you need to have a dude. Yeah. You need to have a guy who can protect that quarterback. Or if Aaron Nolan ends up being the quarterback at some point, the right tackle needs to be a premium dude.
That's never going to happen. That's never
okay. Well, even if it does, someone like Sanders can play both positions. Yeah. So he can go left tackle, he can go right tackle, he can play wherever Ohio State needs him to play. So I think that's the biggest thing. And if they, like I said, if they can end up flipping this, I think it would be the biggest flip that Ohio State could possibly have this cycle. And again, it would really round out Ohio State's recruiting class and really have them have a strong finish through the class. Even if they are going to end up losing a couple guys, they still could end up with the top recruiting class if they land a 5-star guy like Sanders. So
most definitely, losing guys is going to happen because it happens to everybody. It's not an Ohio State problem. It's an everybody problem. But at the same time, I mean, you look where we are right now, number 2 in the nation. I think there's a really good chance we're getting number 1. And if we do, it's not going to be some surprising thing that happens. But yeah, man, if you look at the class right now, like I'm looking at it here, we have our cornerback, we have a corner. We do have Carlo. So but again, that's an Ohio kid. It's an Ohio kid, So I mean, outside of that, I think every position we have on here. I mean, we do have Petty John, we do have Nate Roberts. This class is I think if we get David Sanders, this will be it would arguably be Ryan Day's most complete class in terms of position.
Well, if they're able to keep the class mostly intact, And if they finish with the number one class, it'd be something Ohio State's never done. Ohio State has never had the top ranked recruiting class in the country. So that would truly be historic. But, a big, a real big way for them to land that class is to beat that team up north this week. And, I know that's obviously going to be a large part of our conversations, in and around this team here this week is the game, which that's the way it should be. Yeah. So, with that in mind, what are your primary thoughts when you think about this matchup and how Ohio State matches up across the board with what the Wolverines have?
I don't think they're outside of tight end. I don't think there's a position group they're better than us at. Defensive line, you can pick whichever one you want. I think those are the two best defensive lines in the country. But when you go down the roster, quarterback, O-line, wide receiver, running back, linebacker, which I think ours are playing better right now, corner, safety, it's not – I don't think it's close in those positions outside of maybe linebacker. Yeah. And I think it's a game where I think it should be a beatdown. It should be. Will it? Probably not. Covering I think it's 20.5 points right now. That's a lot of points.
Yeah.
But for this
line's large. Yeah. Well, we talk about you just kind of went down the list there as far as the position group. And excuse me.
Bless you.
With that position group, a lot of Michigan fans I'm seeing, we've got better corners. First of all, no, you don't. Second of all, Will Johnson hasn't played for the last month or so. It seems like he's just kind of he's pulled the ripcord. Yeah. He probably won't play again this year.
And let's be honest. For the games he did play, I think he had that pick six in one game. He was getting targeted this season. He wasn't the elite guy that he was last year. And I think that's part of the reason why he's pulled the ripcord. Because he wants to protect that draft stock. Yep.
Earlier in the year, he was a top 5, top 10 pick. Now, he'll probably still be a first rounder, but it's not going to be that high, and it would only get worse if he gets hurt. So, yeah, I would be shocked to see him play this weekend. I agree with your point about tight end. Loveland, he's the best tight end on the field, which is fine. Ohio State doesn't use the tight end as a large part of their package anyway. Defensively, they were able to keep Tyler Warren in check, who I think is better than Loveland, when Ohio State played Penn State. So I'm not extremely worried about him getting loose, but I think
he's gonna play.
Yeah, if he plays, which it sounds like he's gonna play based on the reports coming out. At least he's gonna try to go. But I think it comes down to what it's come down the last 3 years, and that's the play up front. The line of scrimmage is going to determine this game. If the offensive line is able to play the way they did this past week, there's no reason why it shouldn't be the beatdown that you were talking about. But Michigan's defensive line, that is probably the strongest unit on their team. So Ohio State's going to have to run the ball in this game because they have to maintain balance, and they've got to be the more physical team up front. And I think that's on both sides too. I think Ohio State's defensive line needs to step up the physicality because, quite frankly, Michigan's run all over them the last few years, and that can't happen again.
Yeah, and it's happened in the last few years, but let's not sit here and act like Ohio State's offensive line is arguably better than Michigan's. It's arguably better. That offensive line has not been good all season. Evan Link is one of the worst tackles in college football. Last week I laughed a lot. And, maybe they found something against Northwestern, which I doubt because it's Northwestern. But I laughed at the notion that a bunch of Teton fans were saying, hopefully we find our identity before we play Ohio State. If you're in week 11 talking about finding your identity, and then you want to base that identity off of beating down Northwestern, who I think they're a 4-win team this year.
Yeah.
That's not good because in the truth, and also that's not the rule. That game was the exception. If you go through a whole semester and you take 12 tests, or let's say 11 tests, and on 11 of those tests you score Fs, and on 11, and in one of them you score an A, you don't even average a D.
Yeah.
So it's not going into this game. I don't take anything really from that Northwestern game when I think about this Wolverine team.
Personally, and I mean, I know you know this. Over the years of the
Mhm.
rivalry, there's a lot of things that you know over the course of the history. You can't necessarily take results from earlier in the season as
Mhm.
gospel. Even though Michigan's a bad team, they can still win this football game. We've seen numerous instances of the underdog, whichever team it is, Ohio State or Michigan, coming in and beating the brakes off the other team. So, did this rivalry it changes the way that the teams play just because of the hatred the
Yeah.
teams have for each other, the focus that these teams have on each other. Um, I You mentioned that it should be a beatdown. You're absolutely right. It should be a beatdown based on what on paper, based on how they line up on paper.
Not even. Well, here's my thing. I don't think it's on paper, and and personally, I can care less about anything that's happened in the past seasons. If I look at what they have done throughout the season, and I've watched every single game because I have to. So when I watch this team play, when I see their coach, my perception of what I believe this game should be like is based off what they have put on film.
Yeah,
Even like when you look on paper, you see Mason Graham, you see Kenneth Grant, you see Josiah Stewart, you see Barham. Those are all names you see on that roster. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, let's say we had a Wolverine fan here. I would ask them, tell me how you are going to score on Ohio State. Just
I
tell me what you think the offense looks like.
I think that's a good point
Mhm.
because I mean, if we're comparing offenses, there's no comparison. They
Right.
simply can't move the ball very well. They've got no quarterback.
Mhm.
But I and again, during the JJ McCarthy years, we didn't really think he was that good either. We would say, oh, they've got a good running game. That's how if they're going to win this game, it's because they're going to run it down their throat. And then
Mhm.
if Ohio State just stops that, JJ's not going to be able to make enough plays to really take them to a victory.
Right.
Unfortunately, that did happen just because there were some big plays. Now, some of those were fluky plays, but those were plays that were still made, and they could still run the football. Now,
He
Michigan
was
at
also, I
times,
mean, he was the best quarterback on third down last year. I mean, he threw
yes,
74%.
yes, and
Yeah.
Michigan can still run the football at times this season.
Mhm.
It hasn't been with Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards seems, for whatever reason, he seems washed. I don't know what the hell happened to him, but he can't get into the
Hey,
second level and do anything. So it's Mullings who I'm
Ryan, I've been calling that since last year.
yeah. Yeah. But it's Mullings who I mean, he's
Yeah.
got 832 yards and 11 touchdowns on the year, and he
Mhm.
is by far their leading rusher. And
Correct.
he's someone that does have that breakaway speed when he gets to the second level. And he's someone that does have some power. He can run up the middle and not be phased by going to there. I mean, he's averaging 5.4 yards a carry. That's not a huge number, but
Mhm.
again, you run it twice, that's a first down. So he is someone that Ohio State, I think, absolutely needs to stop. I am not worried about their passing game even a little bit. With all the different quarterbacks they've had 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And that's for
Yeah.
all of the quarterbacks combined. So I think stopping the running game is the number one key to winning this game.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you, I would be okay with risking PIs in this game. I would be okay with Jim Knowles saying, "We're going to bring the house. We're going to leave our corners on islands." I will be okay with that. If we even had 3 PIs in that game, I think we still win going out if we do that. I just when I watch this offense, and sure, everyone can win. Everyone can win. It's football. Everything is not 100%. But I can't unsee what I've been seeing all year. It's almost impossible for me to do so. Because like we said about Indiana, even if Khalil Mullins is averaging, let's say he averages 6 a carry against Ohio State. Let's say he does. They're still gonna have possessions and plays on drives where they are third and 6, third and 7, third and 8, and you gotta pass that ball. You have to. You have to hope that Davis Warren trusts his eyes in what he's seeing in Jim Knowles' defense. And nowhere this season has he shown that. Even last week when he threw 195 yards on 35 passes, that's I think 5 points. It was 5.6 per. And I had a conversation yesterday with my co-host Bryce, and I said on Scar and Blue Show, I said, dude, if a quarterback throws the ball 35 times, he should be damn near 300 yards. He should be.
Yeah.
And so,
Especially
I think
in today's college football.
Yeah. Oh, especially against Northwestern.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of these comments saying that they're going to try to drain the clock. They are going to try to drain the clock, but you do at some point have to score. And as we saw against the IU game, and the broadcast mentioned it several times, Ohio State's got the best red zone defense in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to beat Ohio State, you got to score touchdowns. You can't settle for field goals. So I think Ohio State is well positioned on that front.
Yeah.
And honestly, with what we've seen from Michigan's offense, they're going to be hard pressed to score points quickly, which I think brings us back to the Ohio State offense and how they need to attack Michigan's defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any way that they are able to slow down what Ohio State can do through the air, even if Will Johnson does play. Will Howard, I thought he played very well against IU again. I know we talked about that one interception he had. I didn't think that was his fault. But even though early on he was kind of checking it down, not taking too many chances, eventually the dam broke with the IU defense. I think the same thing's going to happen with Michigan's defense. And over the top, Ohio State didn't take that many shots early on. I think they were kind of saving them. They didn't want to show them necessarily a lot on film for this week. And I can guarantee you Chip Kelly has something up his sleeve for this week offensively. So I think, and Ryan Day, with all of the talk about how the fact he can't beat Michigan with his own players, the only time he's won was with Urban's guys, he's going to want to score 50 on them. So I could see this getting out of hand.
If Ryan Day has the chance, or he knows he can put it on them, he will. I look back at that Clemson game in 2020.
Yeah.
Ryan Day could have called the dogs off a while ago in that game. He was still pissed off on what happened the year before. And while we're up, almost 20, I think over 20 points at that moment, he still decides to throw the ball deep to J-Mo. Still decides to do it. And I hope, and dude, I've been saying this all season. All I want to see is hellfire and brimstone rain on this team. That's all I want to see Ohio State do to them.
It's obviously all I want to see too. And if these two teams play their A games, if both of them, let's say both of them play as best as they possibly can, Ohio State should still win that game by 3 touchdowns. They should still cover that spread. That's how much more talent Ohio State has.
Yes.
Now, obviously, I don't think they're both going to play their A games. I still haven't seen a game, and maybe you disagree with me this on Garrison, but I still haven't seen a game where Ohio State has played a complete A+ game this season.
No,
they have not. I think they've come close. That Purdue game was as close as I think they've gotten. I mean, they obviously shut out the Boilermakers. It was good to see, but even then, there were still some moments that they could have done better. So I still think their best football could be to come, and it could come in this game.
Yeah, and and going right here, Daniel Henry right here.
Yeah.
This will be a Will Howard legacy game. It definitely can be. It definitely can be. If Will Howard was to go out there, and play the way he's been playing most of the season, we're going to look at him like a legend. We're going to. Especially if he were to go and win the Big Ten title and win a national championship, he would be a legend forever in Columbus, Ohio.
What's funny is Kyle McCord had that opportunity last year. If he had that opportunity to lead that game-winning drive, and if he converts that drive, everything's different. He's an Ohio State legend. So hopefully Howard plays a little bit better where it doesn't come down to that.
Yeah, I agree. And, I mean, I don't think Will Howard would let us get in that position.
I don't
I
think
don't.
so either, and I don't think it's necessarily even all up to Howard. Like I mentioned, I think
Mhm.
Kelly is going to have a really good game plan for this Michigan defense. And this is a game they work on all year. So this isn't going to be
Yes.
stuff that they're just implementing this week for practice. This isn't going to be how they prepare for Northwestern. They are going to prepare like they always do for the game. Now, I think their preparation is going to be better this week. I mean, these guys have talked about it. They're tired of the smack talk.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure you saw this, that resurfaced TikTok from Samaj Morgan of
Oh, yeah.
Michigan
Oh,
after
yeah.
last week's game or after last year's game. You know, calling out multiple Buckeyes, calling out Ryan Day. And Jermaine Matthews, he took notice. And I'm sure a lot of other guys in that locker room took notice too. So as if there really needed to be any more fuel in Ohio
Oh,
State's
yeah.
fire, they just poured more gasoline on it.
No, it definitely did. It was funny because I had a Wolverine fan comment on something about it. And he said that comparing him to Samaj, saying that he's just a gunner on punt return. I'm like, do you watch Ohio State
Talking about
football?
Jermaine?
Yeah. like,
Yeah, I
like,
saw
what are you?
that.
I mean, what are you talking
No.
about?
It's clear some of these guys just don't have any freaking clue what they're talking about.
They don't. They don't know that Jermaine Matthews with Will Howard out would literally be their best corner. He would
Yeah,
be their because I think he's the best corner at Ohio State already. He just doesn't start.
I'm
He's
not I'm
just
not quite gonna go that far,
oh
but
I am that
I
far.
think I mean he's gonna be really good. He's
Yeah,
already
he
really
definitely
good.
will.
I think he's only gonna get better. Yeah,
And
but
yeah, but real quick, I just want to touch on that.
yeah,
What you said about Coach Kelly, where Ohio State has a huge advantage in this game is that we've seen a lot of games this year where Ohio State has had to play. We didn't have to, but we just played vanilla. We did, and you're talking about a guy whose playbook is deeper than the sea. You could imagine what Chip Kelly's offensive playbook looks like, and same thing with Ryan Day. Because I think truthfully, we haven't seen much of Ryan Day's playbook this year. Because I have to imagine they combined theirs. And then when you bring that to the other side, you know, if you at this point for the Wolverines, you have 5 losses, which means that if you were going to hide something for this game, you probably should have used it in other games that you should have won. And if you did use it in those games and you still lost, what do you have left?
it's a good point.
What do you have left? Outside of you running that flea flicker that you run every game,
Yeah,
what do you have left? And again, I don't think you disagree with me. It's hard for me to see how they even come within 10 points. I was watching Andy Staples earlier, and Ari asked him, like, do you see like where they can win this game? And he just answered him, no. He said, you don't see there's a way. He goes, no. And that's just how I feel, man.
and for the last 3 years, I had your confidence. That's the problem, and that's why I sit here. I sit here confident, but not cocky, because I thought
Oh,
Ohio State was the more talented football team in each of the last 3 seasons.
okay.
I didn't think there was anything that Michigan was going to be able to do to win any of those games, especially, 2022 at home. I thought that game was in the bag, fresh off the embarrassment of the 21 loss.
Yeah.
So I didn't think there was going to be any chance that they were going to lose that game. And then they got their butt kicked. And it was because of the run game. And that's the one big concern that I have coming into this week. Because Ohio State's defense, all the statistics they were shown, they were great stopping the run last year too. Coming into the game. They were good at it. And yet, on that final defensive drive, when Ohio State really could have used a 3-and-out, Michigan was able to run the ball, and they ran like 6.5 minutes off that clock. And that only gave Kyle McCord, less than 2 minutes to have that game-winning drive down there at the end, and Ohio State had to drain all their timeouts. So that is what concerns me. I don't think the coaching doesn't concern me. The Matchups on paper don't concern me. What concerns me is the will of their guys up front. And our guys just need to have a stronger will. I think they will, but until I see that actually happen on the field like I thought it should have in the last 3 years, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to be a blowout throwaway game.
Okay, so all right, let's go back to that 21 game. So I remember I told a few friends that year. I said, if there was ever a season where you guys beat us, it's probably going to be this year. Why? When people talk about that 21 team, we have to remember that was one of the worst. No, it was the second worst Ohio State defense in the modern era. They were terrible. That was
a whole debacle with Combs getting fired halfway through the year, and then
but I mean, just their play. It was terrible. And at the end of the day, Wolverine fans like to talk about how they beat us bad that game. That game was an 8-point game with 4 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah,
and the defense couldn't get a stop. They couldn't get a stop. You go to 22. That was an embarrassment. That was just an embarrassment of a game. We got our ass kicked. It shouldn't have happened. You go to last year. Now, yes, Ohio. It would have helped if they got a stop. Overall, though, the defense didn't play bad. They didn't play bad. And the thing is that at the end of the day, Cal McCord threw a pick in the beginning of the game, and then he had bad pressure on that. That was horrible blocking.
Yeah, the offensive line was in a bad spot in that game too, and that's something that sort of shockingly concerns me a little bit less, just because of what we saw in IU, and the 2021 and 2022 games, I won't fully dismiss that cheating scandal, here to Brian's point. I do think there is something to be said for them knowing what was coming. I definitely think that played a factor. Now, how big of a factor, I can't say. I don't think it was enough to show that ass kicking that was 2022. There's no reason why that should have happened. There's no reason why Ohio State's players shouldn't have been able to stop Donovan Edwards on those, 2 big runs.
He had 2 yards per carry before that first big run.
Yeah, well, and then Denzel Burke falls over, so they have a deep touchdown pass on that. There's a lot of things that Ohio State screwed up that they still could have won that game. But I've been, I've been watching this team since, early 2000s, and I've seen a lot of stuff just happen that I can't explain on both sides. I mean, the 2004 game, Ted Ginn, they showed that famous punt return that he has, against them at the shoe. Michigan was ranked 7th that year in the country coming into that game. Ohio State they finished that season with 4 losses. Again, that's similar to what we're looking at here. We're a highly ranked team. Michigan is 6-5. So it's not, that much different than that year. And Ohio State destroyed them. They obliterated them. And I think that comes back to the mentality of the coaching staff. And until I see that mentality from this current Ryan Day regime, I'm going to have a little bit of fear. Maybe fear is not the right word. A healthy respect for what. Yeah, fear is not the right word. A healthy respect for what may still happen. Because I'm certainly not afraid of them.
Technically, you're not wrong. Technically, fear does mean a healthy respect. Technically, it does.
Yeah.
I don't fear any of that shit. I just can't. I can't. And like the last 3 years happened. They happened. But what happened over the last 3 years doesn't mean anything to me outside of I want it rectified. Outside of that, I don't care. I don't care if they're good or bad. I want to beat them.
Yeah, of course. Well,
and as somebody, and just like you, I mean, I've been watching Ohio State. This is my first time watching them, and actually knowing what I'm watching was probably 2001. I've only seen them beat us 5-6 times.
Yeah.
So it's usually. I will be very. I've never seen Ohio State lose to a bad Wolverine team. I'll be very uncomfortable if I saw them lose to this team. I'd be very uncomfortable.
If they lose this game, I think Ryan Day's out.
He would have to win the national. No, he would have to win the
Yes,
national.
no, you're right. He'd have to win the
have
national
to.
championship.
He would
That's the
have to.
only way he survives this. And here to Brian's point, you know, looking at all these stats, you know, a lot of those same stats specifically for Ohio State's defense were the same last season, and that still didn't matter. Michigan's offense was better, but it wasn't prolific by any stretch last season. They won a lot of those games by running the football and just having a really good defense. So the stats don't matter, you know, to me all that much. But yeah, I mean, here, of course, cheating is going to impact the outcome. But again, it's hard for me to definitively say that is the sole reason why Ohio State lost those games. Now, there was the 2021 game at Michigan. It was snowing. Allegedly, a lot of the team had COVID or had the flu. It was the flu, actually. And so, you know, they weren't feeling their best going into that game. Again, that still shouldn't matter. If you're the better team, and if you're the better coach team, you should still be able to have enough depth to go out there and get the job done. 2022, they didn't have any of those excuses as far as sickness goes. Yeah, the cheating was still going on. But again, not to the effect where they should have lost by double digits at home. You know, the final game of the year, knowing that if you win that game, you go to the Big Ten championship and you go to the college football playoff. So I think this year's team is a different team. It's built differently, specifically on offense. This is a team that wants to run the ball first. Now, whether or not that's the most successful part of their offense on a game-to-game basis is, you know, remains to be seen. You know, they can move the ball however the way they see best fit for that particular opponent on that day, which is not something I think they could have said even a year ago.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so this is how I feel about the whole cheating thing. You cheat for a reason. And again, and same thing Mark said. You do it for a reason. You know, if you put stickum on your gloves, you do it for a reason. So
I'm not going to sit here and say they didn't get an edge from that.
And like I'm the biggest. Like when it comes to the whole cheating scandal thing, and maybe a lot of Buckeye fans might not like to hear this. I truly care less to talk about it. I truly do, and the reason why.
I like talking about it because it pisses Michigan people off.
No, it does. It does. It really does. But for me, until I see what actually comes of it, I guess I got tired of it because Wolverine fans couldn't understand or even comprehend what was actually happening. It's almost like when they say it's just a cheeseburger. No. You broke COVID protocols.
Yeah.
And that was after the university came out and said that they were ahead of everybody in the conference and COVID, that they knew how to handle it and all that.
Well, it's because Michigan fans, they only want the rules to work for them. You know, when Ohio State allegedly spent $20 million on this team, and now they're all about buying Bryce Underwood. It's just hypocrisy.
Exactly. Okay. So this is where okay.
Now that was obviously a different era, sure.
John Cooper is nowhere near Ryan Day, and I encourage everybody, go look at John Cooper's first 5 years. Go look at his first 5 years, and you will see it wasn't just a Michigan problem. They lost games, and they lost a lot of them. Like John Cooper.
They didn't lose a lot of games. They lost big games.
Oh, no. Cooper, go ahead. I'll pull it up for you.
Yeah, no, Cooper had some of the best Ohio State football teams people have ever seen. I mean, that 95 and that 98 team were unreal. But he just couldn't help from having teams fall apart. And it wasn't just specific to Michigan. Now, his Michigan record was very, very poor. I think he went 2-9 against Michigan. It was not a good record. That That's really what got him fired because he won a lot of he won a lot of big games
Mhm.
and he recruited well. He was really the first national recruiter that Ohio State had since Woody Hayes. He was going down and going. He was getting kids from Florida. He was getting kids from California. He was bringing kids
Mhm.
from all across the country. It wasn't just the build a fence around Ohio and beat everyone else. He was actually
Yeah.
doing some recruiting across the country, which kind of brought them here into the modern era. But it was just every year at the end of the year. I mean, and honestly, I have called, and I'm not going to shy away from this. I have called Ryan Day John Cooper 2.0.
That's
I've
crazy.
I've I've called him that because
That's craziness, Ryan.
he can't beat Michigan. The 93 team.
Right. Well, let
The
me read this to you. Let me read this to you, Ryan. These are his first seasons at Ohio State. 4-6, 8-4, 7-4,
It's 2-10-1.
8-4,
That was his record against Michigan.
8-3.
You're right. Sorry, Mark.
And then after 8-3, he then goes 10-1.
And then
Then
lost to
the
Michigan
next
that
season,
year, that 93 team.
yes, but and then the next year he goes 9-4. Then he has those 4 really good seasons where he's losing to Michigan every single year. Then he finishes off 6-6 and 8-4. Right. The reason I don't like when people say Ryan Day is the John Cooper 2.0 is because when you come from a coaching standpoint, forget the big game thing, forget the Michigan thing. He is not anywhere near, nor does he have the mettle of Ryan Day. He doesn't have the coaching. It's a different conversation. If Ryan Day started off the seasons like that, he wouldn't make it to year 5. He wouldn't make it to year 6. That's
We also
I just
okay.
we
We
can't
also have to
we
go
can't call a guy.
at that
You
point.
can't call a guy 2.0 when he's not having
Well, look, at that point
4
you'd have to
lost
go.
seasons.
You'd have to take an Ohio State history lesson, go back. The end of the Earl Bruce era was bad. It was
No,
bad.
I get that, but that's why I also brought up his last 2 seasons.
And that's why he got fired. That's why
He
they
should have
brought
been
in
fired
Tress.
well long before that. He should have been at least.
Look, that 98 team, like I said, that 98 team, that 95 team, those were 2 of the best. That 93 team gets lost in it, but that team was also really, really freaking good. All 3 of those teams had a chance to win national championships, and 2 out of those 3 years they lost to Michigan. Ryan Day, if you look at his track record so far, 2021 had a chance to make a national championship, win a Big Ten title, loses to Michigan there at the end of the year. 2022 has a chance to win a national championship. Not only does he lose to Michigan, he loses to Georgia as well. Another big game where he's at the end of the year where he's got a chance to win it all. Last year, obviously, same story with Michigan. So it's a pattern. It's a pattern that I am very much hopeful that they can break this year because, as we said before, this Michigan team is not good. But until I see him break that pattern of failure against Michigan, because that's simply what it is, it's a failure. Until he breaks that pattern of failure, to me, he will be John Cooper 2.0, where he can't win the big games at the end of the seasons that matter.
Okay, so first off, what I don't want to do is take away because we are going to have are going to most humans look at the negative. So in the last 3 seasons did happen. That is a pattern. We also can't act like it's like what Wolverine fans do. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I haven't seen Ryan Day put them on the leave them dead on the banks of the Olentangy. I've seen him do that. He did it to Ryan. He did it to Jim Harbaugh. He did that.
Okay.
And wait. And for people and for all the people that want to say that was Urban Meyer's players, can you please tell me who the quarterback was going to be if Ryan Day doesn't show up?
In 2018, are you talking about specifically?
No,
or are you talking about
2019. 2019. It more than likely would have been Tate Martell. It more than likely would have been that piece of trash. So
Martell would have had a shot to win the job. You're right,
and he would have sucked. He would have sucked.
Probably.
Remember,
if he started
chugging off. That was one of the worst quarterback rooms I've ever seen, unless Justin Fields was there. And then there's this. again, what the reason I don't like the John Cooper 2.0 thing is because I'm talking about simply the coach. John Cooper had been a well-seasoned head coach before he took the Ohio State job. Ryan Day's first head coaching job was here at Ohio State.
Yes.
None of us in our wildest dreams would have thought that we would have saw three of the best Wolverine teams they've ever had. None of us saw it coming. It's kind of like when they played K9 when they played Michigan State. They probably didn't think they were going to see a top 5 Michigan State player ever when they played them when he got there. So though he should have, Ryan Day should have won at least one of those games against the Wolverines. I would say 2021 he should have won that game. He should have won that game.
Yeah,
well,
and in those, and you talked about how you didn't think, we didn't know Michigan was going to have really good teams here recently, that faced Ryan Day.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper played against a Michigan team that won a sheriff for a national championship. So it's not like he was also playing against, it's not like Michigan back in the day was how modern day Duke is. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like those teams are necessarily bums either.
Yeah.
So he also found a way to lose those games. My point, and again, I don't want this to turn into some sort of Ryan Day bash session because I think he's done, I actually think he's done a pretty darn good job this year for all of the injuries he's had to deal with. And I thought his hires were outstanding this year as in the offseason. Bringing in Chip Kelly, fantastic hire. Carlos Locking looks like a great hire.
That's a culture hire.
Tim Walton hired him. Great. Seems like he's done well specifically on the recruiting trail. So again, I think, and he ended up hiring Jim Knowles, who's now, gotten this defense, not allowing huge plays.
Yeah.
So I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he's been able to shape this team. And I also give them credit for rebuilding that defense after the Oregon game. They saw, we saw what just happened here. We can't have this. If we're actually going to meet all of our goals, we can't trot out the same defense. So he gets a lot of credit in my book for being able to recognize issues, address them, and fix them so far.
Yeah, most definitely. Jim Knowles has probably been Chip Kelly has a part of it. I think Jim Knowles as a coach has been the biggest upside for this team. If you look back at his Oklahoma State years, in his third year there, that's when he was able to really, really use his defense. And now here he is in his third year here at Ohio State. A few weeks ago, we finally got to see him use his jack position, the defense that he usually, the 3-4 that he usually used at over Oklahoma State, the fake OSU. Man, the way that we looked Saturday, if that's the way the defense is gonna look, look out, man. I mean, and listen, I understand, Ryan, that you're probably a little bit more subtle than I am, buddy. I'm here to spread pure Buckeye propaganda. That's all I'm here to do. And I think that come Saturday, it's going to be really fun to see what everyone thinks on Thursday. Or Wednesday. Yeah, it's going to be really fun to see what everyone thinks because whether we win by 1 or 20, I don't care. I truly don't care if we win by 1 or 20. But if I truly believe that Ryan Day is going to work out, not just him, the guys that have been on this team for the last few seasons, they're going to work out some demons on this Wolverine team. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't have the dogs. That's not our fault. That's got nothing to do with us. Nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this is a team that is going to come out, like I mentioned, motivated before. They're going to, I think this is the opportunity for these Ohio State seniors to change their legacies. These guys have not beaten Michigan yet. They don't want to leave Columbus without without having beaten Michigan. So that's something that lives in these guys' minds this week as, we head towards the, as we head towards the game here.
Yeah.
I think it's something that I think it's something that's important to these guys. And Will Howard even mentioned that he's someone who hasn't been in the rivalry up until this year.
Man. That
and
quote,
he wants that quote was great. That quote was great.
It's way better than what we heard last year.
Yeah. A lot different. He wants to win it for these guys more than almost anybody. So, that'll be great. You got any last thoughts here before we wrap up?
No, I mean, just to what you were saying, man. When I saw that quote from Will Howard, and it fired me up as a fan. It fired me up. Jack Sawyer, he's asked a question about Indiana. He didn't care. He didn't care to talk about Indiana. And when you see that from the guys on this team, it makes me happy. It's like my family, because of like where everyone's going, whether it be with the spouses or whatever, we're celebrating our Thanksgiving that Saturday. That's when my family's getting together. Yeah. And people think I'm a crazy Ohio State fan. They haven't seen my mother. They haven't seen her, who used to be a Wolverine fan, actually. My dad got that right.
Okay.
Good job, Dad.
Fair enough. So, should be a good game to watch. Yeah. So, really excited about that. Obviously, we're going to be talking about this all week. Quick change in programming, since obviously Thursday is Thanksgiving. There won't be a show then. We'll actually be moving it to Friday. That way we can still have you guys chime in on the live show. Again, go ahead and send in your comments. Then we'll talk about whatever you guys specifically want to talk about. And, it'll be a lot of Michigan talk specifically, but there also may be some recruiting news that we might get into at that point as well. But till then, we'll see you Friday. So I'll talk to you then, Garrison. All right.
All right, Ryan. OH.
All right, IO. See you guys on Friday.